She donated blood to save his dying son. Then the billionaire CEO saw her blood type. Who the hell are you? The question hung in the sterile hospital air as Alexander Winters stared at the woman sitting beside his unconscious son's bed. His voice, the same voice that commanded billion-dollar boardrooms, trembled with something between rage and disbelief. Olivia Rivera looked up from the book she'd been reading to the sleeping child, startled by the intrusion. I'm the blood donor. The hospital called me when. Your blood type. Alexander's eyes fixed on the medical chart at the foot of the bed. AB negative with the Kell negative factor. Yes, Olivia confirmed, rising slowly. That's why they called me specifically. It's extremely rare, and your son needed. Turn around, Alexander demanded, his face pale beneath his perfectly groomed exterior. Excuse me? Please, he added, his tone softening unexpectedly. I need to see the back of your neck. Confused but strangely compelled, Olivia turned, lifting her dark hair. The sharp intake of breath behind her was audible. The crescent birthmark, Alexander whispered. Identical to my son's. Identical to mine. Identical to my mother's. Olivia turned back, unnerved by the intensity in his gaze. What is this about? Alexander Winters, whose face she'd seen countless times on magazine covers and business news segments, stepped closer, his expensive suit incongruous against the backdrop of beeping monitors and IV drips. 34 years ago, Elena Rivera Winters died giving birth to twins at St. Mary's Hospital, he said, each word measured and precise. A boy and a girl. The boy lived. The girl was declared stillborn. Olivia felt the blood drain from her face. I was born at St. Mary's. 34 years ago. I was adopted. The girl had a rare blood type inherited from her mother. Alexander continued, his voice barely audible now, and a crescent-shaped birthmark at the base of her neck. 8-year-old Lucas stirred in the hospital bed between them, his small face bruised and bandaged from the accident that had nearly claimed his life. The accident that had required a transfusion of the rarest blood type in the world. That's impossible, Olivia whispered, though something deep within her recognized the truth before her mind could process it. Is it? Alexander's eyes, the exact same shade of brown as hers, never left her face. What's more impossible? That you're my long-dead twin sister, or that you just happen to have the exact blood type my son needed to survive, complete with the same rare genetic marker and identical birthmark that has appeared in the Winters family for generations. The medical chart slipped from Olivia's fingers, clattering to the floor in the sudden, deafening silence. Olivia Rivera had always known she was adopted. Frank and Maria Rivera had been open about it from the beginning, showing her the few documents they had, answering her questions as best they could. They knew very little about her birth parents, only that her birth mother had died shortly after delivery, and that no father was listed on her original birth certificate. She'd made peace with these gaps in her history years ago. The Riveras were all the family she needed. They had given her a loving home, supported her education, celebrated her achievements, and comforted her disappointments. But now, staring at Alexander Winters across his son's hospital bed, Olivia felt the carefully constructed acceptance of her past beginning to crumble. This is insane, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. I'm a kindergarten teacher from East Side. I drive a Honda with 120,000 miles on it. I can't be. A Winters, Alexander finished for her. The daughter of William Winters, one of the wealthiest men in America. The sister of Alexander Winters, CEO of Winters Global Enterprises. His mouth twisted in a humorless smile. Trust me, this isn't how I expected my day to go either. Mr. Winters? A nurse appeared in the doorway. The doctor would like to speak with you about Lucas's discharge plans. Alexander hesitated, clearly reluctant to leave the conversation unfinished. Go, Olivia said. Your son needs you. Will you still be here when I get back? There was an unexpected vulnerability in his question. Olivia glanced at Lucas, sleeping peacefully thanks to her blood flowing through his veins. Yes, I'll stay with him until you return. After Alexander left, Olivia sank back into the chair beside Lucas's bed, her mind reeling. Could it be true? Could she be the long-lost daughter of the Winters family? The implications were staggering. The Winters weren't just wealthy, they were American royalty. William Winters had built one of the largest private companies in the country before his death 5 years ago. Alexander had since expanded it globally, his face regularly appearing on the covers of business magazines, his name synonymous with power and success. And Lucas, this small, vulnerable boy with bandages around his head, could he really be her nephew? As if sensing her thoughts, Lucas stirred, his eyelids fluttering open. "Are you an angel?" he asked, his voice groggy from medication. Olivia smiled despite her inner turmoil. "No, I'm just a person who gave you some blood when you needed it." Lucas's eyes widened. "You gave me your blood? So I have your blood inside me now." "A little bit, yes." "Cool." Lucas decided, then frowned thoughtfully. "You look like Grandma in the pictures." Olivia's heart skipped a beat. "Do I?" Lucas nodded solemnly. "She had the same eyes as me, and the same moon on her neck." He pointed to his own birthmark, identical to Olivia's. "Dad says it's how the Winters family always finds each other." Before Olivia could respond, Alexander returned, stopping short when he saw his son awake. "Dad!" Lucas's face lit up. "Did you know she gave me her blood? And she has the moon mark like us." Alexander approached the bed, his businessman's composure firmly back in place. "I didn't know that. How are you feeling, buddy?" "Better. Can we go home soon?" "Miss Chin promised to make chocolate chip pancakes when I get back. The doctor says tomorrow, if you continue improving." Alexander ruffled his son's hair gently, careful to avoid the bandaged area. "Why don't you rest a bit more while I talk to Miss Rivera outside?" Lucas looked between them, his young face suddenly serious. "Are you going to tell her about being a Winters? Because I think she'd make a really good one." Alexander's carefully constructed facade cracked slightly. "We're going to talk about some grown-up things. You focus on getting better." In the corridor outside Lucas's room, Alexander and Olivia stood awkwardly, the weight of possibility hanging between them. "I've requested a DNA test," Alexander said without preamble. "If you're willing." "Just like that?" Olivia asked. "You meet a woman with the same blood type and birthmark, and you immediately think she's your long-lost twin?" "It's not just that." Alexander ran a hand through his salt and pepper hair, a gesture that made him seem suddenly human, vulnerable even, despite the bespoke suit that probably cost more than her monthly salary. "I've always known something wasn't right about my sister's death. There were inconsistencies in the story, documents that didn't quite match up. My father refused to discuss it. And you think I'm her? Your supposedly dead twin? I think it's a possibility we need to explore." His tone was measured, reasonable, the voice of a man used to navigating complex negotiations. "The timing fits, the physical markers fit, and there's something else." "What?" "When I saw you sitting with Lucas, reading to him, there was something familiar about you. Something I recognized, even though we've never met." Olivia wanted to dismiss his words as fanciful thinking, but she couldn't, because the truth was, she'd felt it too, an inexplicable sense of recognition when she'd first seen Alexander Winters standing in the hospital doorway. "If I agree to this DNA test," she said carefully, "what happens next? If it's negative, we thank you for saving my son's life, and you go back to your life as Olivia Rivera, kindergarten teacher. And if it's positive," Alexander's expression was unreadable, "then we have a lot to talk about." The DNA test results came back 3 days later. Alexander had spared no expense, expediting the process through a private lab. Olivia had spent those 3 days in a state of suspended animation, going through the motions of her daily life, while her mind constantly returned to the possibility that everything she knew about herself might be about to change. They met at a private room in the Winters Tower, the gleaming skyscraper that served as headquarters for Winters Global Enterprises. Olivia felt distinctly out of place in her simple dress and cardigan, surrounded by the sleek, minimalist luxury that characterized Alexander's world. He was waiting for her, a sealed envelope on the glass table between them. "Thank you for coming," he said formally, as if this were a business meeting rather than a moment that might redefine both their lives. "Let's just get this over with," Olivia replied, her nerves making her voice sharper than intended. Alexander nodded, picking up the envelope. "Would you like to open it, or shall I?" "You do it." With steady hands, he broke the seal and removed the single sheet of paper inside. His eyes scanned the document, his expression giving nothing away. Then, wordlessly, he passed it to Olivia. The clinical language swam before her eyes, But one line stood out with perfect clarity: 99.9% probability of full sibling relationship. So, it's true, she whispered, the paper trembling in her hands. I'm a Winters. You're my sister, Alexander corrected gently. My twin sister. Olivia set the paper down carefully, feeling as though the solid ground beneath her feet had suddenly turned to quicksand. How is this possible? How could I have been declared dead and then adopted without anyone knowing? I've been looking into that, Alexander said, his tone shifting to something more businesslike, as if focusing on facts and figures might make this situation more manageable. After our mother died, our father made a substantial donation to the hospital where we were born. Shortly after, all records regarding the birth were sealed. Are you saying he knew? That he deliberately gave me away and pretended I was dead? Alexander's expression darkened. That's what the evidence suggests. Yes. Olivia stood abruptly, needing to move, to process the tidal wave of emotions threatening to overwhelm her. Why? Why keep you and give me away? My father was complicated, Alexander said carefully. After our mother died, he became obsessed with preserving her memory, with protecting what remained of her, which was me. I think having to raise you without her might have been too painful for him. So, he erased me, Olivia said flatly, declared me dead and gave me away like I meant nothing. I'm not defending him, Alexander said quickly. What he did was unforgivable. If I had known. But you didn't know. Olivia cut him off. You were just a baby yourself. They fell into silence, the weight of their shared history pressing down on them. What happens now? Olivia finally asked. Alexander leaned forward, his posture earnest. That depends on you. Legally, you're entitled to a share of the Winters estate. Our father's will didn't account for your existence, of course, but as his biological daughter, you have rights. Olivia shook her head. I don't want his money. I understand that reaction, Alexander said carefully. But this isn't just about money. It's about your birthright, your heritage. My heritage is with Frank and Maria Rivera, Olivia said firmly. They're my parents in every way that matters. Alexander nodded, respecting her position. And what about Lucas? What about me? The vulnerability in his question caught her off guard. This powerful man, this titan of industry, was asking if she wanted to be part of his life. Lucas is a wonderful boy, she said softly. And you're my brother. That means something to me, even if I'm still processing all of this. Relief washed over Alexander's face. So you'll stay? In our lives, I mean? Olivia managed a small smile. I'd like to try, but I need time. This is a lot to take in. Of course, Alexander agreed quickly. Take all the time you need. But perhaps, would you consider meeting Lucas properly? Not as his blood donor, but as his aunt? The word aunt sent a strange thrill through Olivia. She'd always wanted children of her own someday, had always loved her role as a kindergarten teacher. The idea of being an aunt to this bright, curious boy was unexpectedly appealing. I'd like that, she said. Very much. Lucas Winters was waiting for them in the penthouse apartment that occupied the top 3 floors of the Winters Tower. He was sitting cross-legged on the floor of an enormous playroom, surrounded by Lego bricks, his bandaged head bent in concentration over his creation. Lucas, Alexander called softly. There's someone I'd like you to meet properly. The boy looked up, his face lighting with recognition when he saw Olivia. The blood lady. You came back. Olivia laughed despite herself. I did. And my name is Olivia. Lucas scrambled to his feet, approaching them with the direct curiosity of childhood. Dad said you might be my aunt. Is that true? Do you like video games? Can you stay for lunch? I have so many questions. Lucas, Alexander admonished gently. Let Miss Rivera breathe. Olivia knelt down to Lucas's level. I like video games, though I'm not very good at them. And yes, I can stay for lunch. As for whether I'm your aunt, she glanced up at Alexander, who nodded encouragingly. Yes, it looks like I am. I knew it, Lucas exclaimed triumphantly. You have the moon mark, just like me and Dad and Grandma in the pictures. And you have the special blood. Dad said it's the rarest kind in the whole world. That's right, Olivia confirmed. AB negative. Only about 1% of people have it. And we all have it, Lucas said, his voice filled with wonder. That's how we know we're family. Out of the mouths of babes, Olivia thought. This child had accepted in seconds what she was still struggling to comprehend after days. Would you like to see my Lego city? Lucas asked, already tugging her hand toward his elaborate construction. I'm building New York, but better. With more parks and a monorail. I'd love to see it, Olivia said, allowing herself to be led across the room. For the next hour, she sat on the floor with Lucas, helping him construct tiny Lego buildings and listening to his detailed explanations of his improved city design. Alexander joined them after a while, sitting somewhat awkwardly on the floor in his expensive suit, adding suggestions that Lucas either enthusiastically accepted or dismissed with the brutal honesty of childhood. Watching them together, Olivia saw a side of Alexander Winters that the business magazines never captured: the patient father who listened seriously to his son's ideas, who knew exactly which Lego piece was needed without being asked, who occasionally glanced at his phone, but never answered it. You're good with him, Olivia observed during a quiet moment when Lucas had gone to find a specific Lego piece in another room. I try, Alexander said, a hint of uncertainty in his voice. It's not always easy, balancing everything. Where is his mother? Olivia asked, realizing she knew nothing about this aspect of their lives. Paris. Most of the time, Alexander replied, his tone carefully neutral. Isabel and I divorced when Lucas was 3. She's remarried now, to a French restaurateur. Lucas visits her during school breaks. That must be hard for him. It was, at first, but children adapt. And we've established routines, stability. Alexander hesitated, then added, having you in his life, having family would mean a lot to him, to both of us. Before Olivia could respond, Lucas returned, triumphantly holding up a tiny Lego flagpole. Found it! Now, we can finish the Empire State Building. As they continued building, Olivia felt something shift inside her, a tentative acceptance of this new reality. She was Olivia Rivera, daughter of Frank and Maria, kindergarten teacher, blood donor, and she was also Olivia Rivera Winters, daughter of Elena and William, sister of Alexander, aunt to Lucas. Both truths could exist simultaneously. Both families had shaped her, and perhaps, in this unexpected collision of worlds, she might find a wholeness she hadn't known she was missing. I need to tell my parents, Olivia said later, as they sat around the dining table eating lunch. They should hear this from me, not from some news report if this gets out. Alexander nodded. Of course. Would you like me to come with you? The offer surprised her. You would do that? They raised my sister, Alexander said simply. I owe them a debt I can never repay. Olivia studied him across the table, seeing past the polished exterior to the man beneath, a man who, despite his wealth and power, seemed genuinely concerned about doing the right thing. I think that might be good, actually. They'll have questions I can't answer. When would you like to go? They have Sunday dinner every week. I always join them. Would tomorrow work for you? Alexander pulled out his phone, checking his calendar. I have a video conference with Tokyo at 4 p.m., but I can reschedule. No, Olivia said quickly. Don't do that. We could go earlier, around noon. I'll make it work, Alexander assured her, putting his phone away without checking further, a gesture that didn't go unnoticed by Olivia. For a man whose time was reportedly worth thousands of dollars per minute, this casual rearrangement of his schedule spoke volumes. Can I come too? Lucas piped up, his mouth full of sandwich. I want to meet them. Alexander and Olivia exchanged glances. Maybe not this first time, buddy, Alexander said gently. This is going to be a complicated conversation for grown-ups. Lucas's face fell. But they're my family too now, right? If she's your sister, and they're her parents, then they're like my grandparents. Olivia supplied, the word feeling strange on her tongue. And yes, in a way they are. But your dad is right. This first meeting needs to be just adults. I promise you can meet them soon, though. Lucas considered this, then nodded solemnly. Okay, but tell them I said hi, and that I'm really good at building Lego cities, and that I know all the dinosaurs in alphabetical order. I'll make sure they know all those important facts, Olivia promised, fighting a smile. After lunch, as Lucas returned to his Lego city with the supervision of his nanny, Alexander gave Olivia a tour of the penthouse. The space was stunning, all clean lines, floor-to-ceiling windows, and tasteful art, but what struck Olivia most was how it managed to be both luxurious and livable. Lucas's presence was evident throughout. Framed artwork, clearly created by a child's hand, a basketball hoop mounted on one wall, books and toys, neatly organized but accessible. "This is beautiful," Olivia said as they stood in the main living area, overlooking the city spread out below them. "It's home," Alexander replied simply. "Or as close to one as I've managed to create." Something in his tone made Olivia glance at him. "You didn't have much of a home growing up, did you? Even with all the wealth?" Alexander's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "Our father was not a warm man, especially after our mother died. The house was large, well-staffed, impeccably maintained. But no, it wasn't much of a home." "I'm sorry," Olivia said softly, realizing with a sudden clarity how different their childhoods had been. She might not have grown up with wealth, but she'd had warmth, love, security. "The Riveras gave me a real home. They're not perfect, but they're loving and present. I look forward to meeting them," Alexander said. And Olivia was surprised to hear genuine sincerity in his voice. As she prepared to leave, promising Lucas she would return soon, Alexander walked her to the private elevator that served the penthouse. "Thank you," he said as they waited for the elevator to arrive. "For being open to this. For not running away when you could have." "I'm still processing it all," Olivia admitted. "But I couldn't walk away from Lucas, or from the possibility of knowing where I came from." "And from me?" Alexander asked, that unexpected vulnerability showing through again. "Could you walk away from the brother you never knew you had?" Olivia looked at him, this powerful, complicated man who shared her blood, her birthmark, her history. "No," she said honestly, "I don't think I could." The elevator arrived with a soft chime, and Olivia stepped inside. As the doors began to close, Alexander said, "Noon tomorrow. I'll pick you up." "I can drive myself," Olivia protested. Alexander smiled, a real smile, not the polished version she'd seen in magazine photos. "Humor me. It's not every day I get to drive my long-lost sister to meet our parents." The doors closed before she could argue further, and Olivia found herself smiling despite the surreal nature of the entire situation. Tomorrow would be challenging, emotional, possibly even painful. But for the first time since Alexander Winters had walked into that hospital room and turned her world upside down, Olivia felt a flicker of excitement alongside the anxiety. She was going to introduce her brother to her parents, her biological brother to her adoptive parents. The very thought was so bizarre, she almost laughed out loud in the elevator. Life, it seemed, had a strange sense of humor. Frank and Maria Rivera lived in the same modest two-story home where Olivia had grown up, in a working-class neighborhood that had seen better days, but was still filled with well-maintained homes and small, tidy yards. As Alexander's sleek black Bentley pulled up to the curb, Olivia felt a momentary panic at the incongruity of it all. "Maybe we should have taken my car," she said, eyeing the curtains twitching in the neighbor's window across the street. "Too late now," Alexander replied, turning off the engine. He was dressed more casually than she'd seen him before, dark jeans and a simple button-down shirt rather than one of his bespoke suits, but there was no disguising the aura of wealth and power that surrounded him. "They don't know you're coming," Olivia admitted as they walked up the short path to the front door. "I just told them I needed to talk to them about something important." Alexander raised an eyebrow, but said nothing as Olivia used her key to open the door. "Mom? Dad? I'm here," she called out. The familiar sense of her childhood home, her mother's cooking, her father's woodworking, the faint smell of the lemon polish her mother used on the furniture washing over her. In the kitchen, "Misha," her mother's voice called back. Olivia glanced at Alexander, who gave her an encouraging nod, and led him through the small living room toward the kitchen at the back of the house. Maria Rivera was at the stove, stirring something that smelled delicious, while Frank sat at the kitchen table, reading glasses perched on his nose as he worked on a crossword puzzle. They both looked up as Olivia entered, their welcoming smiles freezing slightly as they registered the tall, imposing figure behind her. "Mom, Dad," Olivia said, her voice steadier than she felt, "this is Alexander Winters. He's my brother." The silence that followed was deafening. Maria's wooden spoon clattered against the pot as she set it down. Frank slowly removed his reading glasses, his expression unreadable. "Perhaps we should all sit down," Alexander suggested quietly, his voice gentle in a way Olivia hadn't heard before. The next few minutes were a blur of awkward introductions and stilted small talk as they moved to the living room, Maria insisting on bringing coffee and the cookies she'd baked that morning. Once they were all seated, Frank and Maria on the worn but comfortable sofa, Olivia and Alexander in armchairs, across from them the real conversation began. Olivia explained everything. The emergency blood donation, the discovery of their matching blood types and birthmarks, the DNA test that confirmed they were twins. As she spoke, she watched her parents' faces carefully, seeing shock, confusion, and something that might have been fear cross their expressions. "So you're saying," Frank said slowly when she finished, "that you were never actually given up for adoption. You were declared dead, and then somehow ended up in the adoption system." "That's what the evidence suggests," Alexander confirmed. Our father appears to have arranged it all, though we're still piecing together exactly how." "Why?" Maria asked, her voice tight with emotion. "Why would he keep one baby and give the other away?" Alexander's expression darkened. "That's a question I've been asking myself since we discovered the truth. The most charitable explanation is that he was overwhelmed by grief after our mother died and couldn't face raising 2 infants alone." "And the less charitable explanation?" Frank asked, his protective instincts clearly engaged. "That he wanted a son to carry on the Winters name and legacy, and saw a daughter as unnecessary." Maria made a small, distressed sound, reaching for Frank's hand. "That poor baby. That poor little girl." "I wasn't a poor little girl, Mom," Olivia said gently. "I was your little girl. I had you and Dad. I had a wonderful childhood full of love and support. But you should have had both," Maria insisted, tears gathering in her eyes. "You should have had your brother, your birth family, along with us." "What my wife is trying to say," Frank interjected, his voice gruff with emotion, "is that we would never have kept you from knowing your biological family if we'd had any idea they existed. When we adopted you, we were told your mother had died in childbirth and your father was unknown." "The social worker did mention there might have been a twin," Maria added, looking at Alexander with new eyes. "But when we tried to get more information, we were told there was no record of another child. We thought perhaps she had been mistaken." Alexander leaned forward, his posture earnest. "Mr. and Mrs. Rivera, I want you to know how grateful I am for everything you've done for Olivia. You gave her the loving home that our father couldn't or wouldn't provide. You raised an extraordinary woman." Frank studied Alexander's face, as if searching for sincerity or deception. "And now that you've found her, what do you want from her?" "Dad," Olivia began, but Alexander held up a hand. "It's a fair question," he said, "and the honest answer is that I want to know my sister. I want my son to know his aunt. I want to try to rebuild the family connection that was stolen from us 34 years ago." He paused, then added, "But I have no intention of taking Olivia away from you. You are her parents in every way that matters." Maria wiped away a tear. "And the money? The Winters' fortune? Surely she's entitled to some of that." "Mom!" Olivia exclaimed, embarrassed. "It's all right," Alexander assured her. "Yes, Mrs. Rivera. Olivia is legally entitled to a significant portion of the Winters estate. I've already had the legal team draw up the necessary documents. But Olivia has made it clear she's not interested in the money for herself." "I'm not," Olivia confirmed. "But Alexander and I have been discussing the possibility of establishing a foundation in our mother's name, for children separated from their families through circumstances beyond their control." Frank's expression softened slightly. "That sounds like you, Mija. Always thinking of others. She gets that from you both." "I think," Alexander said quietly. A moment of understanding passed between the 3 adults who, in different ways, all loved Olivia. The tension in the room eased slightly. "Well," Maria said, standing up with sudden decisiveness, "you'll stay for lunch, of course. I made enough pozole for an army. As usual." "I wouldn't want to impose," Alexander began. But Maria waved away his protest. "You are Olivia's brother. That makes you family. And, in this house, family eats together. As Maria bustled back to the kitchen, Frank fixed Alexander with a steady gaze. My wife has accepted you, which means a lot. But I want to be clear about something. Olivia is our daughter. We changed her diapers. We stayed up with her when she had nightmares. We helped her with her homework. We celebrated her achievements and comforted her disappointments. Biology isn't what makes a family. I couldn't agree more, sir, Alexander said with genuine respect. And I have no intention of trying to replace you or Mrs. Rivera in Olivia's life. I just want to add to her family, not subtract from it. Frank nodded, seemingly satisfied with this answer. Then I suppose we should get to know each other. Olivia mentioned you have a son? As Alexander began to tell Frank about Lucas, showing him pictures on his phone, Olivia slipped into the kitchen to help her mother. She found Maria wiping away tears as she stirred the po-sol. Mom, are you okay? Maria turned, enveloping Olivia in a fierce hug. I always knew this day might come, she said, her voice muffled against Olivia's shoulder. The day when you would find your birth family. I just didn't expect it to be the Winters family. It doesn't change anything between us, Olivia assured her, returning the hug just as tightly. You and Dad are my parents. Nothing will ever change that. Maria pulled back, cupping Olivia's face in her hands. I know that, Mija. But this is a good thing, even if it's complicated. You deserve to know where you came from. And that little boy deserves to know his aunt. You're going to love Lucas, Olivia said, smiling through her own tears. He's smart and funny, and he wants to meet you both so badly. He told me to tell you that he's really good at building Lego cities and knows all the dinosaurs in alphabetical order. Maria laughed, wiping away her tears. He sounds wonderful. And his father, he seems like a good man, despite his wealth. I think he is, Olivia said thoughtfully. He's complicated, and I'm still getting to know him. But at his core, I think he's a good person trying to do the right thing. Well, he's your brother, Maria said, as if that explained everything. Of course, he's a good person. Now, help me set the table. We're having lunch with a billionaire, apparently. Olivia laughed, the tension of the morning finally breaking. As she gathered plates and silverware, she could hear her father and Alexander in the living room, their conversation flowing more easily now, punctuated occasionally by Frank's deep chuckle. It wasn't perfect. It was messy and complicated and would undoubtedly become more so as they navigated this new reality. But it was a beginning, a bridge between two worlds that should never have been separated in the first place. And for now, that was enough. The weeks that followed were a delicate dance of discovery. Olivia maintained her teaching schedule, her volunteer work, her Sunday dinners with the Riveras. But she also began to carve out space in her life for this new branch of her family tree. Lucas was the easiest to connect with. Children, in their beautiful simplicity, accepted what adults found complicated. To Lucas, the situation was straightforward. Olivia was his aunt. She had the same special blood as him. She was excellent at reading stories with different voices, and she made his dad smile more than usual. Therefore, she belonged in their lives. The promised meeting between Lucas and the Riveras happened the following Sunday, when Alexander and Lucas joined them for dinner. Lucas had charmed Frank and Maria instantly, presenting them with a carefully drawn family tree that included all of them, plus his mother in Paris and her new husband, whom Lucas had labeled Pierre the chef with no apparent resentment. He's good with food, Lucas had explained seriously to Frank, but he doesn't know how to fix things like you do. Dad says you can fix anything. Frank, who had been somewhat reserved about the whole situation, had melted completely at that, taking Lucas out to his workshop to show him his latest woodworking project. Alexander was more complex to integrate into her life. Beneath his polished exterior, Olivia discovered a man haunted by his father's legacy, burdened by the weight of the Winters empire, and desperately trying to be, for Lucas, what William Winters had never been for him. Present, supportive, loving. He works too much, Lucas confided to Olivia one afternoon as they built an elaborate Lego structure in the Winters game room. But he's trying to be better. He comes home for dinner almost every night now, and he only checks his phone like twice during movies. That sounds like progress, Olivia said, carefully attaching a tiny Lego flag to their tower. It's because of you, Lucas said with a child's certainty. He wants to be here when you visit. And he smiles more when you're around, not his business smile, but his real one. Olivia felt her cheeks warm at this observation. She noticed the distinction between Alexander's smiles herself, the practiced curve of lips he deployed in professional settings, versus the genuine expression that transformed his entire face when he was truly amused or pleased. Your dad and I are still getting to know each other, she said carefully. It's a big adjustment for all of us. Lucas nodded sagely. Dad says family is complicated but worth it. Out of the mouths of babes, indeed. The most difficult conversation came 3 months after their first meeting, when Alexander broached the subject of the Winters' inheritance again. I've had the legal team draw up papers, he said one evening after Lucas had gone to bed. They were sitting in his home office, the city lights twinkling below them through the panoramic windows. Recognizing you as a legal heir to the Winters estate and allocating your portion of the family holdings. Olivia set down her teacup with deliberate care. Alexander, I've told you. I know what you've told me, he interrupted gently. And I respect your position, but this isn't about what you want or don't want right now. This is about setting things right, about acknowledging your existence, your rightful place in this family. The money means nothing to me, Olivia insisted. Then put it in a foundation, Alexander suggested. Use it for education initiatives, for children in need, for whatever causes matter to you. But don't reject it outright, because of how you feel about our father. Olivia studied her brother's face, seeing the determination there, the need to correct a historical wrong. This is important to you, isn't it? Not the money itself, but the acknowledgement. Yes, Alexander admitted. Because every time I look at you, I think about how different both our lives might have been if he'd made a different choice. If we'd grown up together, as we should have. The raw honesty in his voice moved her. For all his wealth and power, Alexander Winters had grown up essentially alone, motherless, with a distant father, carrying the weight of the Winters legacy on his shoulders. Okay, she said finally. I'll accept the inheritance, but on one condition. Name it. I want to establish a foundation in our mother's name. For children separated from their families through circumstances beyond their control. Foster care support, adoption services, family reunification programs. Alexander's expression softened. Elena Rivera Winters Foundation. She would have loved that. And I want you on the board, Olivia continued. Not just as a figurehead, but actively involved. This should be something we build together. Agreed, Alexander said without hesitation. Though I should warn you, I'm told I can be somewhat controlling in business ventures. Olivia laughed, the tension breaking. I'm a kindergarten teacher, Alexander. I manage 25 5-year-olds every day. Your controlling tendencies don't scare me. His answering smile, the real one, not the business version, warmed the space between them. I'm beginning to think nothing does. 6 months after that fateful blood donation, Olivia stood in the grand ballroom of the Winters Tower, surrounded by the city's elite, watching as Alexander officially announced the formation of the Elena Rivera Winters Foundation. Her parents, both sets, in a way, were there. Frank and Maria Rivera, beaming with pride as they chatted with Lucas, who had appointed himself their personal guide to all things Winters. And Elena and William Winters, present in the large portrait that Alexander had commissioned for the occasion, showing them in their youth, before tragedy and questionable choices had fractured their family. Are you ready? Alexander appeared at her elbow, looking immaculate in his tuxedo, but with that slight tension around his eyes that only she seemed to notice these days. As I'll ever be, Olivia replied, smoothing down her gown, a designer creation that still felt foreign against her skin, so different from her usual wardrobe of practical teaching clothes. You don't have to speak if you don't want to, he reminded her. I can handle the announcement. No, Olivia said firmly. We do this together. That's the whole point, isn't it? Alexander's expression softened. Yes, it is. As they made their way to the podium, Olivia caught sight of Lucas, giving her an enthusiastic thumbs up from between Frank and Maria. The boy who had unknowingly brought them all together, whose need for her rare blood type had unraveled decades of secrets and lies. Standing before the crowd, Alexander began the formal introduction, his CEO voice in full effect as he explained the foundation's mission and goals. But when he turned to introduce Olivia, his voice changed, becoming more personal, more real. 6 months ago, my son needed a blood transfusion. The hospital called in a volunteer donor with his rare blood type. That donor turned out to be the sister I never knew I had, the daughter our father had erased from our family history. A murmur went through the crowd, the scandal and drama of it all, exactly the sort of thing that captivated high society. In finding Olivia, I discovered not just a sister, but a piece of myself that had been missing, a connection to our mother that I thought was lost forever. Alexander turned to her, his public mask slipping to reveal genuine emotion. And Lucas found an aunt who does the voices in storybooks much better than I do. Laughter rippled through the audience, breaking the tension. The Elena Rivera Winters Foundation is our way of honoring our mother's memory and ensuring that other families separated by circumstance might find their way back to each other. Alexander gestured for Olivia to join him at the microphone. And now, I'd like to introduce my sister, Olivia Rivera Winters, who will share more about our vision for this foundation. As Olivia stepped forward, she felt a strange sense of coming home, not to the Winters' name or fortune, but to a truth about herself that had always been there, waiting to be discovered. She was Olivia Rivera, daughter of Frank and Maria, kindergarten teacher, blood donor. And she was also Olivia Rivera Winters, daughter of Elena and William, sister of Alexander, aunt to Lucas. Both truths could exist simultaneously. Both families had shaped her, and now, with this foundation, she would help shape the futures of children caught between worlds, between families, between identities, just as she had been. Thank you, Alexander, she began, her voice steady and clear. 6 months ago, I donated blood to a child I'd never met. I had no idea that simple act would lead me here, to this discovery of family I never knew existed. She paused, looking out at the sea of faces, strangers in expensive clothing who had come to witness the latest Winters family drama unfold. But among them were the people who mattered. Her parents, Alexander, Lucas, her family, both chosen and biological. The Elena Rivera Winters Foundation will focus on 3 key areas, she continued, finding her professional voice. First, supporting children in the foster care system with educational resources and stability programs. Second, providing legal assistance to families seeking reunification after separation. And third, funding research into medical protocols that keep families together during health crises. This last point was personal, a direct response to what they had learned about their own family's fracture. If different medical choices had been made that day 34 years ago, their story might have been entirely different. We believe that every child deserves to know where they come from, Olivia said, her voice softening. And every family deserves the chance to stay together when possible, or to find each other again when separation has occurred. She turned slightly, including Alexander in her gaze. My brother and I were separated for 34 years. We can never recover that lost time. But through this foundation, we hope to prevent other families from experiencing similar losses. Alexander stepped closer, a subtle show of solidarity that didn't go unnoticed by the crowd. The Winters siblings, united at last, it was the kind of narrative that society columnists dreamed of. Blood connects us in mysterious ways, Olivia concluded, thinking of the transfusion that had saved Lucas and changed all their lives. Sometimes, literally, the Elena Rivera Winters Foundation is our way of honoring those connections and creating new ones for families who need them most. The applause was immediate and enthusiastic, the crowd rising to their feet in that particular way of the wealthy who recognized a good philanthropic opportunity when they saw one. Checkbooks would be opening tonight, Olivia knew. Alexander had prepared her for that aspect of these events, the performative generosity that nevertheless resulted in real funds for real causes. As they stepped away from the podium, Alexander leaned close. You were perfect, he murmured. Mother would have been proud. The words sent an unexpected warmth through Olivia's chest. She would never know Elena Rivera Winters, never hear her voice or feel her embrace. But in these moments, through Alexander's memories and Lucas's inherited mannerisms, she caught glimpses of the woman who had given her life. Mr. Winters, Miss Rivera Winters. A photographer approached, gesturing toward the portrait of their parents. Could we get a photo of you both with the portrait for the foundation's website? Alexander looked to Olivia, letting her make the call. These moments of deference still surprised her, This powerful man who commanded a global empire, checking with his kindergarten teacher's sister before making decisions. Of course, Olivia agreed, and they positioned themselves beneath the portrait of William and Elena Winters in their youth, before tragedy, before separation, when the future still held infinite possibility. As the photographer adjusted his settings, Lucas darted forward. "Wait, I should be in it too." Alexander laughed, a genuine sound that Olivia had come to treasure for its rarity. "Of course you should, buddy." He lifted Lucas between them, the boy beaming with importance. "The Winters family," the photographer said, raising his camera. Olivia felt a momentary pang, thinking of Frank and Maria watching from the crowd. But then she caught her mother's eye, her adoptive mother, the woman who had raised her, loved her, shaped her into the person she was today. Maria gave a small nod, her eyes shining with tears, but her smile full of understanding and pride. Family wasn't an either-or proposition. It was both, and the Riveras and the Winters. Her past and her present. The life she had lived and the life she was discovering. "Smile," the photographer instructed, and Olivia did not the practiced smile of someone performing for a society photograph, but a genuine expression of the complex joy she felt in this moment of connection. The flash went off, capturing the three of them beneath the watchful gaze of William and Elena Winters. A family portrait 34 years in the making. Later that night, after the guests had departed and Lucas had finally been persuaded to go to bed despite his excitement, Olivia found herself on the terrace of the Winters penthouse, looking out over the city lights. Alexander joined her, loosening his tie and carrying 2 glasses of whiskey. "Successful evening," he said, handing her one of the glasses. "The foundation already has commitments for over $10 million in initial funding." Olivia accepted the whiskey but raised an eyebrow. "Is that a lot or a little in your world? I've lost perspective on what constitutes real money since meeting you." Alexander's mouth quirked in amusement. "It's a very respectable start. Enough to fund our first year of programs with room to grow." They stood in companionable silence for a moment, sipping their drinks and watching the city below. "I've been thinking," Alexander said finally, "about blood types." "A common topic of contemplation at 1 a.m., Olivia teased. He smiled but continued his thought. "The statistical probability of you being at that hospital, having the exact blood type Lucas needed, at the exact moment he needed it. It's astronomical." "Are you getting mystical on me, Alexander? Doesn't seem like your style." "I'm a businessman. I deal in probabilities and calculated risks," he acknowledged. "But this finding you through Lucas's accident, it defies calculation." Olivia considered this. "My mother Maria would say it was God's plan, that we were meant to find each other." "And what do you say?" She turned to face him fully, studying the features that were both familiar and strange, the shape of his eyes so like her own, the set of his jaw reminiscent of the man in the portrait. "I say that blood calls to blood. That somewhere in the universe, there's a force that pulls families back together, no matter how far apart they've been scattered." Alexander nodded slowly. "I like that theory. It's not very scientific," Olivia admitted. "Neither is family," Alexander replied. "If it were, it would be much easier to manage." Olivia laughed softly. "True, though I think you're doing pretty well with Lucas." "I'm trying," Alexander said, a hint of vulnerability in his voice. "I don't want to repeat our father's mistakes." "You won't," Olivia said with certainty. "You're present. You're engaged. You see Lucas for who he is, not for who you want him to be." Alexander was quiet for a moment, then said, "Having you in our lives has changed things. For both of us. Lucas adores you, and he paused, seeming to search for the right words. "I never knew how much I needed a sister until I found you." The simple honesty of his statement touched Olivia deeply. This man, who had everything: wealth, power, influence, had discovered something he didn't know he was missing in his kindergarten teacher sister, with her modest apartment and second-hand car. "I never knew how much I needed a brother," she replied softly. "Or a nephew. Or this." She gestured vaguely at the foundation event they had just hosted, the new purpose they had created together. "So we're agreed," Alexander said, raising his glass slightly. "The universe knew what it was doing when it brought us together, however improbable the circumstances." Olivia clinked her glass against his. to improbable circumstances, and to blood, Alexander added, the kind that saves lives and the kind that connects them. As they stood together under the vast night sky, Olivia felt a sense of completion she hadn't known she was missing. The circle of her life, which had begun in mystery and separation, had somehow found its way back to wholeness through an 8-year-old boy's need for her rare blood type and a brother she never knew she had. Some might call it coincidence. Others might call it fate. Olivia simply called it family, messy, complicated, imperfect, and absolutely essential. And as the city lights twinkled below them like earthbound stars, she silently thanked whatever force had guided her to that hospital on that particular day, to donate blood that would save not just a child's life, but her own sense of belonging in this vast and mysterious world. 1 year later, Olivia stood in the doorway of Lucas's hospital room, watching as her nephew chatted animatedly with a young girl in the next bed. The girl, no more than 7, with a pale face and frightened eyes, had been admitted that morning for emergency surgery. Lucas, there for his annual checkup following the accident that had changed all their lives, had immediately appointed himself her official hospital guide and friend. And then, Lucas was saying, they found out that my aunt had the same special blood as me. And that's how we found out she was my dad's sister. So maybe something cool like that will happen to you too. The little girl looked doubtful. I don't think so. I'm just here to get my appendix out. Well, that's pretty cool too, Lucas assured her. You'll get a scar, and scars are awesome. Mine's almost gone now, but it was really cool when it was fresh. Olivia smiled, marveling at her nephew's resilience and kindness. The past year had been a journey of discovery for all of them, learning to be a family across differences in background, lifestyle, and expectations. There had been awkward moments, misunderstandings, even arguments. But there had also been laughter, support, and a deepening bond that none of them had expected. He's good with her, Alexander said, appearing beside Olivia with 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to her. The nurses said she's been terrified all morning. Wouldn't talk to anyone. 10 minutes with Lucas, and she's chatting away. He has a gift, Olivia agreed, accepting the coffee gratefully. The Rivera charm, Mom would say. Alexander smiled at the mention of Maria, who had become something of a surrogate mother to him over the past year, feeding him enormous Sunday dinners and scolding him for working too hard with the same fearlessness she showed everyone else. Speaking of the Riveras, are they still coming to the Foundation's anniversary gala next week? Wild horses couldn't keep them away, Olivia confirmed. Mom's already had her dress altered twice. She's nervous about fitting in with all the fancy people, as she calls them. She has nothing to worry about, Alexander said firmly. She and Frank are the guests of honor. As far as I'm concerned, the Foundation wouldn't exist without them. It was true. The Elena Rivera Winters Foundation had flourished beyond their expectations in its first year, due in no small part to the practical wisdom and genuine compassion that Frank and Maria had brought to the board. Their decades of experience as adoptive parents had shaped the Foundation's approach, ensuring that its programs were grounded in the real needs of families rather than abstract theories. Dad's been working on his speech for weeks, Olivia said with a fond smile. He keeps saying he's not going to give one. But I found drafts in his workshop. Alexander laughed softly. I look forward to it. Frank's perspective is always illuminating. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching Lucas demonstrate to his new friend how the hospital bed controls worked, making the head rise and fall dramatically while the girl giggled. Dr. Winters? A nurse approached, clipboard in hand. Lucas's test results are back. All clear. Dr. Chin says you're free to take him home whenever you're ready. Thank you, Alexander said, the relief evident in his voice, despite the expected good news. The nurse smiled at Olivia. Miss Rivera Winters, the blood drive coordinator, asked me to remind you about next Tuesday's special session. They're focusing on rare types. I'll be there, Olivia assured her. Since discovering the power of her rare blood type, she had become an advocate for donation, regularly volunteering at the hospital's blood drives and speaking at schools about the importance of becoming a donor. As the nurse left, Alexander checked his watch. We should get Lucas home. He has school tomorrow, and I have that conference call with Singapore at 5 a.m. You work too much, Olivia said automatically, the phrase having become something of a running joke between them. So my sister keeps telling me. Alexander replied with a mock sigh. And yet, strangely, the company continues to require leadership. The company would survive if its CEO took a vacation once in a while, Olivia countered, bumping his shoulder lightly with hers. Lucas has been asking about that trip to the Grand Canyon for months. A flicker of guilt crossed Alexander's face. I know. I'm working on clearing my schedule for spring break. See that you do, Olivia said firmly. Or I'll have to tell Maria you're skipping Sunday dinner again, and then you'll really be in trouble. Alexander laughed, a free and easy sound that had become more common over the past year. A fate worse than death. Your mother's disappointment is more effective than any board member's criticism. They moved into the room to collect Lucas, who was reluctant to leave his new friend. But she'll be all alone, he protested, gesturing to the girl who was watching their exchange with wide eyes. My mom is coming back soon, the girl said, though she looked uncertain. She just had to go get some things from home. Olivia exchanged glances with Alexander, both recognizing the familiar fear of a child alone in a hospital. Lucas, why don't you give her your contact information? Olivia suggested. That way, she can let you know how her surgery goes. Lucas brightened at this solution. Yeah, and then maybe she can come to my birthday party next month. It's going to be awesome. We're having it at the Science Museum, and they're going to let us touch real dinosaur bones. The girl's eyes widened with interest. Really? I love dinosaurs. Me too, Lucas exclaimed, as if this coincidence was the most amazing thing he'd ever encountered. What's your favorite? Mine's Ankylosaurus, because of the club tail, but Triceratops is cool too. As Lucas and his new friend launched into an enthusiastic discussion of prehistoric creatures, Olivia felt a wave of affection wash over her. This bright, open-hearted boy had been the catalyst for the most profound change in her life, bringing her not just a brother and a nephew, but a whole new understanding of who she was and where she belonged. He gets that from you. You know, Alexander said quietly, following her gaze. That ability to connect with people instantly, to make them feel comfortable and valued. I certainly didn't teach him that. I think you underestimate yourself, Olivia replied. He's kind because you've shown him kindness. He's generous because you've been generous. Children learn what they live. Alexander. Before he could respond, Lucas bounded over to them. Sophia's going to text me after her surgery tomorrow. I gave her our phone number. Is that okay, Dad? Of course, Alexander assured him. That was thoughtful of you. Lucas beamed, then turned back to wave at Sophia. Bye. Remember, dinosaurs are awesome, and appendix surgery is no big deal. My friend Jake had it last year, and he said the ice cream afterward was the best part. As they walked through the hospital corridors toward the exit, Lucas between them, chattering about dinosaurs and his new friend, Olivia felt that now familiar sense of rightness settle over her. This was her family, not the one she was born into, not the one she was raised in, but the one she had discovered through an extraordinary twist of fate. Aunt Olivia, Lucas said suddenly, tugging at her hand. Do you think Grandma Elena is watching us from heaven? Dad says she might be. The question caught her off guard. Alexander rarely spoke of spiritual matters, being firmly grounded in the tangible world of business and facts. That he had suggested such a possibility to Lucas revealed yet another layer to the brother she was still getting to know. I think, Olivia said carefully, that the people we love are always with us in some way. And I think your Grandma Elena would be very proud of the family we've become. Lucas nodded, satisfied with this answer. That's what Dad said too. And he said she'd especially like how you and Grandma Maria make him eat vegetables even when he doesn't want to. Alexander coughed, clearly embarrassed. I don't recall mentioning that specific detail. You didn't have to. Lucas replied with the devastating honesty of childhood. I have eyes, Dad. I see you hiding your Brussels sprouts in your napkin when you think no one's looking. Olivia burst out laughing, the sound echoing in the hospital corridor. Busted by an 8-year-old. Wait until I tell Maria about this. Traitors, both of you, Alexander grumbled, but his eyes were bright with amusement. See if I take either of you for ice cream on the way home now. You promised, Lucas protested, his expression comically outraged. I did, didn't I? Alexander sighed dramatically. Well, I suppose a promise is a promise, even to vegetable-enforcing sisters and observant sons. As they stepped out of the hospital into the bright afternoon sunlight, Olivia felt a moment of déjà vu. 1 year ago, she had walked through these same doors after donating blood, never imagining that her life was about to change forever. That the simple act of giving blood would lead her to discover a brother, a nephew, and a part of herself she never knew was missing. "What are you thinking about?" Alexander asked, as they walked toward his car, Lucas running ahead to examine a particularly interesting beetle on the sidewalk. "About how different everything was a year ago," Olivia admitted. "How none of this seemed possible." Alexander nodded, understanding immediately. "I was just thinking the same thing. A year ago, I was a single father trying to balance a global company with raising a son, convinced that was all my life would ever be. And now? Now I have a sister who calls me out when I work too late," he said with a wry smile. "Sunday dinners with the Riveras where business talk is strictly forbidden, a foundation that's actually making a difference in children's lives, and a son who's happier than I've ever seen him." "It's been quite a year," Olivia agreed. "The best of my life," Alexander said simply. Despite the circumstances that started it all, they reached the car, where Lucas was already waiting impatiently, eager for the promised ice cream. As Alexander helped him into the back seat, Olivia looked back at the hospital building, thinking of all the lives that intersected within its walls every day. The patients, the medical staff, the visitors, the volunteers, each with their own story, their own struggles and triumphs. And somewhere in there, perhaps at this very moment, another family was being formed or transformed in ways they couldn't yet imagine. Another connection was being made that would change everything. "And Olivia, come on," Lucas called from inside the car. "Dad says we can get double scoops if we hurry before his phone starts ringing with work stuff." Olivia laughed and slid into the passenger seat. "Double scoops it is, then. Though I'm not sure your grandmother would approve of ice cream before dinner." "Which grandmother?" Lucas asked innocently. "Because Grandma Maria gave me cookies before dinner last week and told me not to tell you or Dad." Alexander raised an eyebrow as he started the car. "Did she now? Interesting how the vegetable enforcer becomes the cookie enabler when it suits her. That's what grandmothers are for," Olivia said with a smile, breaking the rules parents set. As they pulled away from the hospital, heading toward Lucas's favorite ice cream shop, Olivia felt that sense of completion wash over her again. Her life had expanded in ways she never could have predicted, encompassing both the Rivera family that had raised her and the Winters family she had discovered through a remarkable twist of fate. Blood called to blood, as she had told Alexander that night on the terrace. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, it called loudly enough to be heard across decades of separation, bringing together what should never have been torn apart. "Hey," Alexander said softly, glancing at her as they stopped at a red light. "You okay?" Olivia smiled, watching Lucas in the rearview mirror as he counted the dogs they passed on the sidewalk. "I'm perfect," she said, "just thinking about how grateful I am for that blood drive last year." "Me too," Alexander replied, his voice thick with emotion. "Every single day." The light turned green, and they moved forward together. A family reunited by the rarest of blood and the strongest of bonds. A connection that transcended time, circumstance, and even the deliberate actions that had once torn them apart. In the back seat, Lucas began to sing along with the radio, his clear voice filling the car with joy. Olivia joined in, followed reluctantly by Alexander, whose deep baritone was surprisingly melodic despite his protests that he couldn't carry a tune. Three voices, one family, moving forward into a future none of them could have imagined a year ago. A future built on the foundation of a simple act of generosity that had rippled outward, changing everything in its path. Blood had called to blood, and they had answered. And in that answer, they had found not just each other, but themselves. The Elena Rivera Winters Foundation celebrated its first anniversary with a gala that brought together the city's elite with families who had benefited from its programs. In the grand ballroom of the Winters Tower, children in foster care mingled with billionaires. Adoptive parents shared stories with corporate executives, and families reunited through the foundation's efforts stood as living testimony to its mission. At the center of it all were the unlikely architects of this vision. Alexander Winters, the billionaire CEO whose cold exterior had melted considerably over the past year. Olivia Rivera Winters, the kindergarten teacher whose warmth and practical wisdom had shaped the Foundation's approach. Frank and Maria Rivera, whose experience as adoptive parents had provided invaluable guidance. And Lucas Winters, who at 9 years old had appointed himself the Foundation's junior ambassador and took his duties very seriously indeed. "Ladies and gentlemen," Alexander said from the podium, his voice carrying across the crowded ballroom. "1 year ago, we launched the Elena Rivera Winters Foundation with a simple mission: to support children separated from their families through circumstances beyond their control. Today, I'm proud to report that we've helped over 500 families reconnect, provided educational support to more than 1,000 children in foster care, and funded research that has already changed hospital protocols for keeping families together during medical crises." Applause rippled through the crowd, but Alexander held up a hand. "These numbers are impressive, but they don't tell the real story. The real story is about people, about children finding their place in the world, about parents reconnecting with children they thought were lost to them, about families being made whole again." He gestured toward a group of families standing near the front, all beneficiaries of the Foundation's work. "These are the real success stories, and they wouldn't have been possible without the support of everyone in this room." Alexander paused, his gaze finding Olivia in the crowd. "But most of all, they wouldn't have been possible without the woman who inspired it all, my sister, Olivia Rivera Winters, who donated blood to save my son's life and in doing so, saved our family as well." As Olivia made her way to the podium amid enthusiastic applause, she caught sight of Frank and Maria, watching with tears in their eyes and pride on their faces. Beside them stood Lucas, practically bouncing with excitement in his first formal suit, giving her an enthusiastic thumbs up. This was her family, all of it, in all its complicated, beautiful entirety. And as she took her place beside her brother to address the crowd, Olivia knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. "Thank you, Alexander," Olivia said, her voice steady despite the emotion welling in her chest. "When I walked into that hospital room a year ago, I had no idea my life was about to change forever. I was just doing what I'd done dozens of times before, donating blood because I could, because someone needed it." She paused, looking out at the sea of faces watching her intently. "What I didn't know then was that the boy receiving my blood was my nephew, that his father was my twin brother, that the simple act of donation would unravel a family secret kept for 34 years and lead to the creation of this foundation." In the front row, Lucas beamed up at her, his pride evident in every line of his small body. Beside him, Frank and Maria held hands, their eyes shining with tears. The Elena Rivera Winters Foundation exists because of a remarkable coincidence, or perhaps, as some might say, because of fate. But its work continues because of all of you, because of your generosity and your belief in our mission. Olivia gestured toward the families standing nearby. "These are the real heroes of our story. Parents who never gave up searching for their children, children who maintained hope despite years of separation. Families who opened their hearts and homes to children in need of stability and love." She turned slightly, including Alexander in her gaze. "My brother and I were separated for 34 years. We can never recover that lost time. But through this foundation, we can help ensure that other families don't experience similar losses. That children know where they come from. That families torn apart by circumstance have the resources and support they need to find their way back to each other." Alexander stepped forward, placing a supportive hand on her shoulder. "In our first year, we've made remarkable progress. But there is still so much work to be done. So many families still searching, so many children still waiting. With your continued support, we can expand our programs, reach more families, make an even greater impact. And now," Olivia continued, "I'd like to introduce someone very special. A man who, along with his wife, taught me everything I know about what makes a real family. My father, Frank Rivera." The applause was warm and genuine as Frank made his way to the podium, looking slightly uncomfortable in his new suit but determined nonetheless. Maria blew him an encouraging kiss from her seat. "I'm not much for public speaking," Frank began, his voice gruff with emotion. "But some things need to be said, and I guess I'm the one to say them." He cleared his throat, glancing down at the notes in his hand before setting them aside. 34 years ago, my wife, and I got a call that changed our lives. There was a baby girl who needed a home. We'd been waiting for that call for years, praying for it. When we held Olivia for the first time, we knew she was meant to be our daughter. Frank looked directly at Alexander. What we didn't know, what we couldn't have known, was that she had a brother out there. A twin who was growing up without her, just as she was growing up without him. His voice grew stronger, more passionate. If we had known, we would have moved heaven and earth to keep them together. Because that's what family does. Family fights to stay together, to protect each other, to love each other through good times and bad. Frank turned to address the crowd more broadly. That's what this foundation is really about. It's not just about reuniting families, though that's important work. It's about redefining what family means. It's about recognizing that family isn't just about blood or birth certificates. It's about love, commitment, showing up day after day, year after year. He gestured toward Alexander and Olivia. My daughter has two families now. The one that raised her, and the one she found through an extraordinary twist of fate. And you know what? There's room in her heart for both. There's room in all our hearts for more love, more connection, more family. Frank's voice broke slightly. The Elena Rivera Winters Foundation isn't just helping children find their biological families. It's helping all of us understand that family is bigger, more inclusive, more powerful than we ever imagined. And that's a legacy worth building. As Frank returned to his seat amid thunderous applause, Olivia felt tears streaming down her face. Alexander, too, was visibly moved, his usual composure cracking to reveal the depth of his emotion. Lucas, unable to contain himself any longer, ran up to the podium and grabbed the microphone. And now, he announced with the confidence of a seasoned public speaker, "It's time for the special surprise." Alexander raised an eyebrow at Olivia, who shrugged, equally confused. This wasn't part of the program they had carefully planned. "Ladies and gentlemen," Lucas continued dramatically, "please welcome to the stage Sophia Chen and her family." From the side of the ballroom emerged a familiar face, the little girl from the hospital, now fully recovered from her appendix surgery, accompanied by her parents and younger brother. Sophia was beaming, clearly delighted to be part of whatever surprise Lucas had orchestrated. "Sophia was in the hospital the same day as my one-year checkup," Lucas explained to the bemused crowd. "She was scared about her surgery, so I told her about how my aunt gave me her special blood and saved my life, and how we found out we were family. And guess what happened?" He paused for dramatic effect, looking around the room with the timing of a professional entertainer. "The doctors did some tests, and they found out that Sophia has the same super rare blood type as me and Dad and Aunt Olivia. AB negative, with a special Kel negative factor." A murmur ran through the crowd as the implications became clear. Alexander stepped forward, his expression a mixture of shock and dawning comprehension. "We did some research," Sophia's father said, taking the microphone from an enthusiastic Lucas. "My wife was adopted as an infant from St. Mary's Hospital, the same hospital where Elena Rivera Winters gave birth to twins 34 years ago." Olivia felt her knees weaken, and Alexander moved quickly to her side, his arm supporting her. "The timing matches," Sophia's father continued, "and preliminary DNA tests suggest a familial connection. We're still waiting for final confirmation, but it appears that my wife, Grace, may be related to the Winters family, possibly a cousin or other close relation." The ballroom erupted in excited conversation. Alexander guided Olivia toward the Chen family, his face a study in controlled emotion. "This is unexpected," he said, extending his hand to Grace Chen. "But not unwelcome, not at all." Grace? A petite woman with the same crescent birthmark at the base of her throat that marked the Winters line, smiled tentatively. "When Sophia came home talking about her new friend Lucas and his special blood type, I never imagined it would lead to this. I've never known anything about my birth family." "Well," Olivia said, finding her voice at last, "it seems you do now, or at least you're beginning to." Lucas and Sophia were already chattering excitedly, comparing notes on their shared blood type and what it might mean. "See?" Lucas was saying triumphantly. "I told you something cool would happen after your surgery." As the adults began the awkward but hopeful process of getting to know each other, Exchanging information and making plans for further DNA testing, Olivia caught Alexander's eye over the children's heads. "Blood calls to blood," she mouthed silently. He nodded, a smile breaking across his face, not the polished smile of the CEO, but the genuine expression of a man witnessing something miraculous. "Apparently, it calls rather loudly in our family." Frank and Maria had joined them now. Maria immediately taking Grace under her wing with the same maternal warmth she showed everyone. Frank engaging Sophia's father in conversation about his work as an engineer. The boundaries of family were expanding yet again, stretching to include new faces, new stories, new connections, and at the center of it all stood Lucas and Sophia, the youngest generation of a family tree that was proving to be far more complex and far more resilient than anyone had imagined. "I think," Alexander said quietly to Olivia as they watched the scene unfold, "that mother would be very pleased with how this evening has turned out." "I think she would," Olivia agreed, though I doubt even she could have predicted this particular development. Alexander laughed softly. The Winters family has always had a flair for the dramatic. It seems that tradition, at least, continues unabated. As the gala continued around them, the news of this latest family discovery spreading through the crowd like wildfire. Olivia felt that now familiar sense of rightness settle over her. This was her family expanding in unexpected ways, bridging gaps of time and circumstance, creating connections where none had existed before. Blood had called to blood once again, and once again they had answered. 2 years after that fateful blood donation, Olivia stood in the doorway of her classroom, watching as her kindergarten students filed out for the day, backpacks bouncing, voices raised in excited chatter about weekend plans. "Miss Rivera Winters," a small voice said, tugging at her skirt. "My mom says to tell you thank you for the foundation helping with my brother's adoption papers." Olivia knelt down to 5-year-old Zoe's level. "You're very welcome, sweetheart. How is Miguel settling in?" "He's good," Zoe reported seriously. "He cried a lot at first, but now he only cries sometimes. And he likes the dinosaur pajamas I gave him." "That's wonderful," Olivia said, giving the child a quick hug. "You're being an excellent big sister." As Zoe ran off to join her waiting mother, Olivia felt a familiar presence behind her. She turned to find Alexander leaning against the doorframe, watching her with a fond expression. "How long have you been standing there?" she asked, gathering her things. "Long enough to see you in your natural habitat," he replied. "You're remarkable with them, you know. They adore you." Olivia smiled, glancing around her classroom with its bright decorations and carefully organized learning centers. "I love what I do. Not everyone gets to say that about their work." "Speaking of work," Alexander said, following her as she moved around the room, straightening chairs and picking up forgotten sweaters. "I have a proposition for you. If it involves me joining the corporate world, the answer is still no," Olivia said firmly. "I'm perfectly happy molding young minds right here." Alexander laughed. "Nothing so dramatic. The Foundation's education initiative is expanding. We're opening a preschool for children in the foster care system, providing early intervention and stability during transitions. We need a director, someone with educational expertise, someone who understands both the system and the children in it." Olivia paused in her tidying. "And you thought of me?" "The board thought of you," Alexander corrected, unanimously. "I merely agreed with their excellent judgment." "I don't know, Alexander," Olivia said hesitantly. "I love my classroom, my students. You'd still be working with children," he pointed out, "just in a different capacity, making a broader impact, and the salary is considerably better than what the public school system offers." "It's not about the money," Olivia began, then stopped at Alexander's knowing look. "Okay, the money would be nice, especially with the wedding coming up." Her engagement to David, a pediatric surgeon she'd met through the Foundation's medical advisory board, had been announced just a month earlier. The wedding was planned for the following spring, with Lucas proudly serving as ring bearer and Sophia as a junior bridesmaid. "Think about it," Alexander suggested. "Talk it over with David. There's no rush for a decision." Olivia nodded, appreciating his lack of pressure. In the 2 years since discovering their connection, she and Alexander had developed a relationship built on mutual respect and genuine affection. He had learned to temper his natural tendency toward control, and she had learned to appreciate the strategic mind behind his business decisions. "Lucas is waiting in the car," Alexander said, checking his watch. "We're heading up to the cabin for the weekend. He's been talking about fishing with Frank nonstop since Wednesday." The cabin, a modest 5-bedroom retreat in the mountains that Alexander had purchased specifically for family gatherings, had become a regular weekend destination. Frank had taken to teaching Lucas traditional skills like fishing and woodworking, while Maria filled the kitchen with delicious aromas and fussed over everyone's eating habits. "Dad's been tying flies all week," Olivia confirmed with a smile. "And Mom's packed enough food to feed a small army, as usual." "Will you and David join us tomorrow?" Alexander asked as they walked toward the parking lot. "Wouldn't miss it," Olivia assured him. "Though we'll be late, David has a surgery in the morning." They reached Alexander's car, where Lucas was waiting impatiently, his face lighting up when he saw Olivia. "Aunt Olivia, did Dad tell you about the school? You have to say yes. Then you can be my boss when I volunteer there for my community service hours next year." Olivia laughed, ruffling his hair. "Is that why you want me to take the job? So you can have an easy supervisor for your service project?" "No," Lucas said with exaggerated patience. "It's because you're the best teacher ever, and those kids need the best. Dad says so too." Alexander had the grace to look slightly embarrassed at having his private comments repeated. "Well, he's not wrong," he admitted. "You are the best." Olivia felt a rush of affection for both of them, this brother and nephew, who had burst into her life so unexpectedly and changed it so completely. "I'll think about it," she promised. "Now go on. Get to the cabin before Dad eats all the cookies Mom baked this morning." As they drove away, Olivia stood in the school parking lot, considering the proposition, director of the Elena Rivera Winters Foundation preschool. It had a nice ring to it, and the opportunity to help children during their most vulnerable transitions, to provide stability and educational support when they needed it most, that aligned perfectly with her personal mission. Her phone buzzed with a text from David. "Surgery finished early. Heading home to pack for the cabin. Love you." Olivia smiled, typing a quick reply before heading to her own car. Her life had expanded in ways she never could have imagined that day she walked into the hospital to donate blood. A brother, a nephew, an extended family that now included the Chens, a fiancé who understood and supported her commitment to both her biological and adoptive families, and now this new professional opportunity. All because her blood type matched a little boy's need. All because blood had called to blood across decades of separation. As she drove toward the home she now shared with David, Olivia thought about the Foundation's motto, emblazoned on its letterhead and promotional materials. "Family finds a way." In her case, family had found a way through an extraordinary series of coincidences, or perhaps, as she preferred to think, through the mysterious workings of a universe that sought to heal old wounds and create new connections. Either way, she was grateful. For the brother who had once been a stranger. For the nephew who had needed her blood. For the parents who had raised her with love. For the fiancé who had entered her already complex life and embraced every part of it. And for the blood that flowed through her veins, the rare, precious blood that had saved a child's life and, in doing so, had saved something in all of them. Something that had been broken long ago but was now, finally, wonderfully whole. Family had found a way. And Olivia Rivera Winters had found her place within it, a place that encompassed both who she had always been and who she was still becoming. A kindergarten teacher, a foundation director perhaps, a daughter, a sister, an aunt, soon a wife, and always, always, a woman whose simple act of generosity had rippled outward, changing everything in its path. Blood had called to blood, and in answering that call, they had all found their way home.